Hi, my name is Erica Sanders, and I'm the Director of Program Services for the Metropolitan Milwaukee Fair Housing Council. Our mission is to combat illegal housing discrimination throughout the state of Wisconsin and to help create and maintain racially and economically integrated neighborhoods. We take complaints from people alleging housing discrimination in the rental, sales, insurance, and lending markets. We provide direct outreach and education to housing consumers and housing providers on fair housing and fair lending. And we advocate for public policies that support the creation of inclusive communities. And we're asking for a $3,000 Game Changer grant in order to put on a bus advertising campaign in Milwaukee County, particularly on bus routes that travel through predominantly minority neighborhoods. The goal of the campaign will be to raise awareness of fair housing issues and to empower people to file fair housing complaints when they're concerned their rights have been violated. In this day and age, housing discrimination is oftentimes subtle and difficult to detect, and that means it's underreported. And furthermore, many people don't know where to turn for help if they experience discrimination, or are concerned that filing a complaint won't yield any meaningful results for them. And this campaign will be designed to combat all of that. Furthermore, it will reach far more people than our direct staff services can provide in fair housing presentations and similar activities. Racial equity is at the core of our mission and what we do every single day at the Fair Housing Council. As I mentioned earlier, we take housing discrimination complaints, and race-based complaints are one of the most commonly filed with our office. We work with those complainants to achieve legal remedies that can include things like monetary damages paid to a victim of discrimination, or sometimes having that complainant achieve the housing they were initially denied unlawfully. We can also open up the market even beyond an individual complainant. When a complaint is successfully resolved, we can sometimes train housing providers on fair housing laws. We can ask that they affirmatively market their property so that doors are open to many, many more people in a community. Racial equity is important for another reason. Metropolitan Milwaukee is the most segregated metro area in the nation. And that segregation limits the life choices and chances of people living in segregated communities of color. And it gives rise to the stark racial disparities that we see in metropolitan Milwaukee in areas of life like health care, in educational attainment, in household wealth and income. Social scientists tell us that racial discrimination in the housing market is one of the primary causes of racial segregation. And so if we want to get at the root of that racial segregation, we need to address racial discrimination in the housing market. Another point I'd like to make is that people of color are disproportionately represented in our complaint pool, even when filing complaints on bases other than race. So for example, we take a lot of familial status complaints every year, familial status being a protected category which prohibits discrimination against families with children. And in the last 3 years, half of all complainants based on familial status have been people of color. So we understand racial equity in an intersectional and inclusive way. In the short term, the impact of a Game Changer grant would be to increase the number of people able to seek our services and get those types of legal remedies I mentioned earlier. In the long term, it means a more open and fair housing market as people protect their rights and as housing providers are held accountable. We know that in similar campaigns elsewhere in the country, fair housing organizations have seen a real rise in contacts, sometimes by as much as 30% after an advertising campaign. So this really could be a game changer. So thank you so much for the opportunity.